No matter what hour your clock strikes, here it's always Halloween. And I'm always your haunted host, Luce Tomlin Brenner. Welcome to Small Frights Friday. On these episodes, I like to share a curated selection of calls from the All Hallows Hotline and letters from the EEEEK mailbag. This way we can create a sense of community and shared experiences among us while we're also learning about new traditions and experiences and getting some much needed Halloween questions answered. So let's take it away with the first call, shall we?
Hi, I wanted to call and share a Halloween tradition that my mom and I used to do every year when I was little. So my pop-pop had gotten, he had lost his leg in World War II, and he always had a wooden leg it was a very realistic looking, realistic looking enough for being a wooden leg that he had gotten like in the 40s. And, like the knee bent and everything. So from far away, it looked like a real leg. And he passed away before I was born. He passed away, I think, in 1975. But my mom had always kept the wooden leg. And for Mischief Night, for October 30th, we would hang the leg out the back of the trunk of her car, and we would drive around town just with this leg hanging out the back of the car. And enough people would either recognize what day it was and be like, oh, that's a joke, that's funny, haha, like honk and laugh and stuff. And then every now and then we would get someone pull up next to us just utterly appalled, either think it was in bad taste or think that we actually had somebody in the trunk or something. But anyway, we used to do that every year, and it was always something fun that I looked forward to. And as a youth, it kept me from going out and ruining things on Mischief Night. And I don't know what the leg is now. I don't know if she still has it or if it's gone with time. But anyway, that's just something fun we used to do that I wanted to share.
Caller, thank you so much for that hilarious story. I loved it. And I especially love the idea of people pulling up next to you in their cars, being like, how dare you? That's so disrespectful. When something is so clearly a prank, I can't imagine that they would be mad if they really thought it was a leg. In that case, I feel like you would end up getting pulled over by cops or something asking you about this leg. I've actually had quite a few people call and write in about Mischief Night and Devil's Night. So I'm going to do a whole episode on that with focused letters and calls when it gets a little closer to Halloween. So I'll refrain from totally diving in on this one, but we did not have a Mischief Night in Ohio. It wasn't something I'd ever even heard of as a kid. I guess I didn't live in all of Ohio. I should say in my hometown of Elyria, outside of Cleveland in Ohio, we did not practice Mischief Night. But I love these stories from people about the pranks and things they got into, because I always think about how trick or treat, the phrase, it's really like we're not playing pranks or tricking people anymore like they did in Victorian times. In the most recent 2 episodes, we've been talking about how boys would be throwing wagons on top of barn roofs and stealing front gates and making sidewalks disappear. Like, we did not do that kind of stuff as kids. We really just wanted to eat candy and hang out and maybe pop out behind a corner at one another. So I would love to hear any more Mischief Night stories if there were people who are also out there playing pranks like our caller and her mom. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was a delight. All right, we are going to pivot now to a letter from the EEEEK mailbag, and it's a ghost story, our first ghost story. I'm very excited. Okay, here we go. I never believed in ghosts until around 2006 when I was visiting a friend in the super small town of St. Petersburg, Pennsylvania. Seriously, the population is 371, and that was in 2018. One day, I was alone at her mother's house, waiting for her to come by and pick me up after work. She texted me to say she would be there in a few minutes, so I made my way downstairs. On the wall by the landing, they had a triptych of mirrors you could look into and see the top of the landing from. I glanced in the mirror up to the top, and that's when I briefly saw a man in a brown suit and matching fedora-type hat straight out of the 1930s and 1940s. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. I thought I was losing my mind, or maybe I had just made it up. When my friend got there, she noted I was pale and asked what was wrong. I asked her if she believed in ghosts, and after she said yes, I told her what I saw, and in unison she said with me, "A man in a brown suit." She knew exactly who I was talking about, and she said she's seen him off and on throughout her entire life in that house. My blood ran cold. She explained that when they moved into that old house of theirs, there was this enormous bureau in her mother's upstairs bedroom. No one could figure out how it got in there, let alone up a second flight of stairs. They must have built it in the room. They tried everything possible they could think of to get this heavy piece of bulky furniture out, and they just couldn't do it. Soon enough, their mother went to bed and dreamed of this man in the brown suit who told her how to take the bureau apart. It was like a mysterious puzzle, something no one would ever think to try, short of hacking the piece up. The next day, my friend's mother mentioned this to her family, and sure enough, the directions the man gave her were exactly how you take the bureau apart. Talk about mind-blowing. My friend told me that he never came off as a harmful ghost or anything like that. He was just always around. Thank you for your wonderful podcast. I'm excited to continue listening to it and learning more about this exceptional holiday. That also happens to be my husband's and mine anniversary. Should you ever elope, I highly suggest doing it in New Orleans on Halloween. It was perfect for us almost 3 years ago. With pumpkin guts and love, Laura. Laura, thank you so much for that fun, creepy ghost story. And please, if you have another ghost story, send it in. I want to hear them. Never hesitate to tell me more stories like that. That was very good, beginning, middle, and end. And I love to hear a happy ghost story or maybe a helpful ghost story. I myself have never seen a ghost, and I am enchanted by the possibility, but also terrified that I couldn't handle it because I love scary things to a point, but I'm very delicate when it comes to like actually having to deal with like real life terror. So I'm not sure if I could handle seeing a ghost, but I desperately want to. So maybe if I ever get to see one, it could be somebody helpful looking over me like this, telling me how to assemble and disassemble furniture. That's the kind of help I could really use, the extra hands I need around the house. But I'm so happy you're enjoying the podcast, and happy anniversary to you and your husband. You know, as I've said on last week's episode, I've never been to New Orleans, and I hope I get to go because it seems like a beautiful place to celebrate all kinds of important dates, and I'm glad you got to have such a special wedding there. Okay, up next we have another call, and this one is about costumes.
Hi, this is Emily. I would love some costume ideas that incorporate a mask but aren't just, a sexy nurse wearing a mask or a ninja. I'm trying to think of creative ways to wear a fun costume but be safe this year. Thanks. Bye.
Emily, thank you so much for your call, and I agree with your inclination that this is not the year to dress as a sexy nurse, just because I think we've all had a little too much exposure to healthcare situations this year. So if Halloween can be an opportunity to not think about coronavirus or flus or getting sick, I think that's best for everybody. So this is the year of the mask for Halloween costumes. I don't mean the masks that we have to wear every day to stay safe. I'm saying this is the time to go and blow a paycheck on one of those really cool big rubber latex masks that are always on like the top shelf of the, Halloween store. The ones that are really elaborate recreations of like killer clowns from outer space, or a werewolf with like an articulated jaw that has real fur. Like, just don't put any money or time into creating another outfit, and like get a really big, cool, scary mask. And then this way, underneath that mask, you can wear like one of the thinner, like filtered masks, and comfortably put your big scary mask on over it, and nobody will see the like protective mask that you're wearing. And you also then don't have to worry about incorporating that protective mask. Now, if you want to go in a different direction, or you don't have access to the big masks, or you don't want to pay like more than $100, totally fair. Very reasonable. My other suggestion would be doing something that involves some sort of a head wrapping. Like, let's say you go as a mummy. Okay, so you like have your mask on, but then you also like wrap gauze around the mask so you can't see it. You could also go as the Invisible Man, which, he had the gauze wrapped around his head. So again, wear one of the thinner filter, like KN95 type masks, and then just like wrap the gauze around it, and then nobody will see. Again, this means that you cover up your whole face, right? But we're used to it by now. We've been covering our faces all year. And I think this is also an opportunity if you wanted to, if you're an artistic person and you can draw something that looks like something. Like for me, my artistic talent is all in my brain and comes out my mouth. I cannot make my brain tell my hand to do something and then create something with my hand. It just won't do it. Everything just comes out like a stick figure and like a house, or like one of the birds that's basically a V. So if you're unlike me and you're very good artistically and your brain tells your hand how to make something beautiful, another thing you could do is get a solid color cloth mask and paint like a cool, scary mouth on it. You could do like a Cheshire cat type mouth or a jack-o'-lantern type mouth, and you could use your mask in that type of way. You can design the mask to fit any type of kind of creepy mouth you want to have. I think that this is an opportunity to go scary. This isn't a sexy Halloween year, okay? Like, we're not trying to get close to one another. We don't want each other's fluids on each other, okay? So toss sexy aside for next year. Go full on scary. This is a scary year. There's a lot of scary stuff going on. This is your opportunity to like go big with it. And again, if you are going to be going out and like showing your costume off, you still want to make sure you're creating, that 6 feet of social distancing. So this is also an opportunity to possibly make a costume with a paper mache head. Very fun. So you can't buy one of those big masks, but why not recreate one? Or how cool would a Frankenstein, like a big Frankenstein head look? You could actually make it look like it was melded by different pieces of flesh and bodies with paper mache. So this is an opportunity to get really creative and artistic this year. I would love to hear what other people are thinking of with their costumes. I have to admit, I don't have a costume idea ready for myself, and I can't decide if I even want to get dressed up this year for the gram. So I would love to hear what other people are doing. And Emily, please get back in touch and let me know if any of those ideas strike your fancy or if you've come up with anything else. Thanks so much for calling. Okay, next we have a letter from Erin. Hi, Luce. I listened to one of the podcast episodes where a listener recommended the Halloween Tree movie, and I realized I've never seen it. So I rented it last night, and I gotta say, it's a pretty great movie for the season. Some of my favorite Halloween specials are the Scary Godmother series and a stop-motion short called Spooky Bats and Scaredy Cats. These are kid-friendly and very cozy. Thanks so much for the recommendations. You're welcome, Erin. I'm so glad that you got to discover something that you hadn't seen before. I have gotten a lot of feedback from listeners who haven't read the Halloween Tree book or seen the movie, and people are really diving in this month, and that just delights my heart that we could open up a new story to people. Thank you so much for your recommendations. I'm not familiar with those, so I look forward to hearing them. And as always, listeners, feel free to send in any more recommendations that are cozy over scary, but if you want to go like fully crazy, let us know your craziest Halloween movies. I haven't heard much from the horror gang yet this season. All right, now we have a call promoting a fun event.
Hey, Lucy, this is Elisa. I'm calling because, first of all, I love your podcast. Second of all, I think that your podcast listeners would be well suited and prepared for this most joyous of Halloween events that I'm putting together. It is a trivia event. It is Halloween related, and I consider your podcast to be excellent study material. It's going to be on October 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Western. And the prize is $50 that gets PayPal'd or Venmo'd to you, and it's $10 to play. It's going to be very festive, very Halloween-y, getting some performances together. There's a costume contest. But anyway, it's going to be super fun. The link is in my bio on Instagram. My Instagram name is Fluff Manor. F like Frank, Luff Manor. M as in Michael, A-N as in no! O-R. Fluff Manor. Link in bio. You should come. Try it. Or die.
Elisa, what an incredible witch laugh you have. Thank you so much for blessing the podcast with that. That sounds like a really fun trivia night, and I love the idea that we could come and all do it together as a It's Always Halloween podcast community. And I especially love that it's on Mischief Night, October 30th. So if some of y'all out there in listening land need to have something to occupy your minds and are trying to stay out of trouble, I think this trivia night sounds like a fun idea. I love that you could win money, and I love that there's a costume contest. So thanks so much for telling us about that. I will put a link in the bio so that people can find it very easily. And if anyone else has any fun international or national events that people could get involved with, share it with the podcast. I know there's a lot of people out there who are looking for fun, safe Halloween plans this season. Okay, next up, we have a very fun call about the connection between fear and sexuality. So if there are any sensitive listeners who may not be up for that type of conversation, you might want to skip this call.
Lucy, it's Briston again. I have a question. Okay, so I don't really like being scared, but a lot of my friends do. And I think that's really weird. Like, what is it chemically or hormonally that like feels good to be scared scientifically? That's sort of weird. And then also sometimes being scared is kind of sexy, and I don't really understand why that is. I have a friend who likes to send me pictures of them in really scary clown masks. I think I want to sleep with them. Is this a thing or am I crazy? Okay, bye.
Risden, thank you so much for calling again. It's great to hear from you. Listeners might remember Risden from our Little Devil in Tokyo episode. She was the little devil who her parents trotted around Tokyo to confused people who were not celebrating Halloween. So this is such a great question. Why is fear? Why is it kind of sexy to be scared? Or how can we possibly get aroused or have a good time when we're afraid? And this is very similar to questions I get a lot as someone who enjoys haunted houses and scary movies. Is why do you think that's fun? It's not fun to be scared. And I will tell you, it's fun to be scared when you know that you're safe, when you know that there's not a real threat. Now, when I get legitimately scared that there is a creep following me home, or there's somebody knocking at my door that I don't know and they're lingering too long, I don't like that. I'm not trying to recreate that sensation. I do like when I pay my money to Universal Studios and I am going into a house that is themed like Haddonfield and I'm going to have a bunch of Michael Myers jump out at me. I love that. I love to scream. I love to laugh. I love not knowing what's behind the corner, but also knowing that I'm safe. And there actually is scientific evidence to explain that. So when something scary enters our awareness, whether that's real or made up, whether it's a real threat or not, our body goes into that fight or flight response. However, right as that happens, your body determines if the threat is real or not. So the fight or flight sense gets triggered and your body goes, hold on, am I really going to get hurt right now? And if there's no threat, the physiological and psychological mechanisms calm down and you don't have the same kind of reaction that if you're actually scared, you're going to run away or you're going to fight somebody. So when your body senses you're not threatened, you still experience fear, but instead of releasing the hormones that make you stronger and faster and put you in a defensive mode, your body actually releases hormones that are essentially there to make you feel good. So it's like a state of arousal that your body gets put in. And I don't necessarily mean sexually, but like joyfulness, happiness, very similar to if you like being on a roller coaster. That kind of like, what? This is terrifying. But like your body's like, you're fine. It's not the same type of fear. So it's a different type of a fear. So your body hijacks the flight response and like figures out how to enjoy it, which I think is really interesting. And that's actually the reason why you laugh. Like if you're a person who laughs after they scream, that's me. If you do that too, it's because the body releases dopamine when we're afraid. And so dopamine is a chemical in our brains that is like the same chemical we get when we're excited or happy and we're like around people we really like. So, if you're in a movie theater and you're seeing a horror movie and there's a jump scare and everyone's like, and then there's just like tittering throughout the audience, that's why. So it's really interesting that you said that about, your friend, you guys trading pictures. She sends you scary clown mask pictures. Well, in that moment, Risden, you're not scared of a clown coming to get you. They're not random clown pictures. Let's say you started to get random clown pictures from a number you couldn't identify. Your body might tap into that real fear response, but then you wouldn't start laughing. You wouldn't get turned on by it. You'd be like, what in the actual heck is going on right now? Like you would get probably legitimately scared by it. Your body would not release that dopamine. But because it's your friend sending it to you, and maybe it's somebody that you already have some sort of a friendly connection with, somebody that already kind of gets you going in other ways, and then they do this thing that's kind of like silly and kind of like quirky, for lack of a better word. And it's scary, like a scary clown mask is scary, but like, the person under it is somebody that you like. So because of that, you're like, this is fun. I'm having a great time. And then one more thing I want to add is that obviously, as we've learned, there's people who really love roller coasters and horror movies and haunted houses more than others. And there's actually some science behind that as well. This is based on a study by, it looks like it's at Vanderbilt University, and I'm going to link this information in the show notes as well so that you guys can read this for yourself. But whether or not you like these types of thrills is possibly related to the number of autoreceptors your body has. And autoreceptors are molecules that control how much dopamine and other thrilling chemicals get released. It turns out that people with fewer autoreceptors may get more dopamine from a scare, which leads to this craving for thrilling situations. So if you don't like to be scared, Risden, if you don't like horror movies or going to haunted houses, or you don't find any of that thrilling, it could just be that you have more autoreceptors than someone like me who really loves that, who's really missing that this time of year, who wants to walk around a corner and have a masked man jump out, but only at a haunted house, not in real life. So thanks so much for that call, Risden. I hope that answers your question and the questions of people that I get every year about why do you like these things? Okay, up next we have a very thoughtful letter from a listener who is writing in to comment and educate me based on our conversation that we had last week at the end of the episode about Jen's call asking about the Bates Motel rumor / urban legend that someone had died in a Halloween scene in this hayride and that their body had been there throughout the hayride and that people had been looking at a dead body and thought it was just a prop. So this is just another content warning to let everyone know that we are going to be talking about suicide for a little bit here again at the end of this episode. So if that is something that you need to not hear, definitely take a break, skip to the end. This is the last letter. So if you need to turn off the podcast now, then do so. Thank you so much for listening. And here we go. Hi, Luce. I just love your new podcast, and I wanted to say that before diving into my attempt at educating you and fellow listeners. And please know, I do not mean any disrespect of any kind. I thought I should add that as it's easy to misinterpret tone over text. That's true. Thank you very much, writer. As someone that deals with depression on a daily basis for as long as I can remember, suicide ideation isn't something new to me. I've often found that the wording, quote, committing suicide, quote, to be abhorrent and full of victim blaming. It makes it sound like a crime, and while it's devastating for anyone left behind, it's not okay to demonize anyone that felt they had no other choice but to take their own life. In recent years, people are finally starting to say, quote, carried out suicide instead, and that's wonderful, I think. So I just wanted to invite and, plead with you to do the same. I'm sure I don't need to tell you words are powerful, as they're what you're making your living off of, and that's amazing. Also, here's an article that can better articulate what I'm trying to say. And then the writer sent in a Huffington Post article, which I found really helpful, and I will link in the show notes, called Why You Should Stop Saying Committed Suicide. And this is by Lindsay Holmes. And I just wanted to read a little bit from this to give further context to our writer. So this is from the article. The term committed suicide is damaging because for many, if not most, it evokes association with committing a crime or committing a sin and makes us think about something morally reprehensible or illegal. The phrase committed suicide also ignores the fact that suicide is often the consequence of an unaddressed illness like depression, trauma, or another mental health issue. It should be regarded in the same way as any physical health condition. You don't commit a heart attack. Instead, you might hear someone say that they died from a heart attack. Dying by suicide is the same. When attaching the word committed, it further discriminates against those who lost their battle against a disease. So in the article, it goes on to say that the best phrase to use is died by suicide, or as our writer said, carried out suicide. And I really appreciate this so much. Writer, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to write this letter. I really appreciate your kindness and the effort that you put into this. I will be making a huge effort from now on to stay aware and change my language around suicide going forward. I must say I'm quite embarrassed I made this mistake because I too have struggled with depression and suicidal ideation, and I wholeheartedly believe it's important to destigmatize mental health struggles so that people don't feel ashamed to reach out for help. You know, it's interesting, I never considered how committed links it to criminality, and I really hate that. It's really wild how we can just say certain phrases for years without necessarily breaking them down and understanding the meaning behind them. Like you said in your letter, words really are super powerful, and I truly believe that the history of words and phrases matter, and that's exactly what I'm exploring in this podcast. So again, I thank you for your patience and your good faith, and I hope that my listeners find this just as helpful as I did. As I said last week, I'm a big proponent of crisis hotlines and therapy and medication. All of these tools have saved my life at different times. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The number there is 1-800-273-8255, or you can text HOME, HOME, to 741-741. And that's free 24-hour support on the crisis text line. So thank you so much again for writing that in and helping educate. Learning is really important to me, and I always want to take every opportunity I can to grow and be a better person. So thank you for that opportunity, writer, and I hope that this helps other people as well. So before we call it a day here, I have one other message that I wanted to read that came in through Instagram. I did start a It's Always Halloween podcast Instagram last week, so still pretty fresh. There's only a handful of posts up there, but please follow to get more updated content, and I'm putting a lot of pictures up there that correspond with the episodes as well. So this comment is from Angela, who runs an account called Halloween Hunter. And this was a comment on my Victorians post about how apple bobbing and apple peels were all related to fortune telling, and you could find out who you were going to marry by being engaged in those activities. So Angela says, apple bobbing. I was always so terrible at this as a kid. We had a Halloween party for daycare every year, and I always ended up with my own separate apple bucket because it took me too long. Angela, thank you so much for sharing. Apple bobbing is something that I don't think is fun in real life. I tried it one time at a friend's party. I found it sort of sickening when I was actually doing it because I was like, I am just opening my mouth in this bucket of water that everyone else at this party has opened their mouth and like drooled into. It's like backwash as a pool that my whole face is in. So it's a little gross, and then it's almost impossible to actually grab the like apple with your mouth. Like if it's a teeny tiny little apple, but I think these apples were like Honey Crisps. Like it was way too difficult to like get a good bite in. So I've never had a successful game of apple bobbing, and I find it slightly vile now to think about my mouth being open in a pool of water that a bunch of other people's mouths are open in. So, hey, if anyone out there in It's Always Halloween land has had a successful round of apple bobbing, please let us know. Is it how you met your future spouse? Let us know. Give us a call on the All Hallows Hotline at 802-532-DEAD. Or write us an EEEEKmail at itsalwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. And there is a new way to get involved with It's Always Halloween. This week, I launched a Patreon for It's Always Halloween, and I would love to have you guys come visit and maybe throw a couple bucks in support. I would love to keep this podcast ad-free if possible. I find ads to be a little obnoxious when I'm listening to podcasts, but it is the only way that people are able to make money from podcasting. But if possible, I would love to be able to get some more content out there for you guys. I know some people have been asking for longer episodes, and, there's so many more Halloween history facts I want to share with you guys in different ways. So I have a few different levels, one as low as $3 a month, and you can also get merch for It's Always Halloween on the Patreon as well. So give it a look, see what you think. I would love any feedback. If there's any kind of tiers or any other types of events or Q&As you'd like to do, let me know. And you can follow me there at patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween. It's Always Halloween is researched, written, and performed by me, Luce Tomlin-Brenner. The editing, theme music, and sound design is by Pete Burns. Thanks, Pete. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at LTBcomedy and Pete at Mittenberries, and follow the podcast at It's Always Halloween Podcast. If you're on Apple, please subscribe and write us a little review so that other like-minded ghouls can find us. Thank you so much for contributing to and listening to It's Always Halloween. Make sure to come back next week, unless you're too scared.